Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. As always, thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. We love you, we thank you, and if you want to become a patron, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different tiers, see what you want to sign up for, and it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, click, and voila.
It is.
Okay, today we want to talk about the do's and the don'ts of finding safe shelter. Now, you may or may not be in a situation where you need safe shelter. If you don't, or you're not, you probably know somebody who has sought shelter, been in a domestic abuse situation, or, whatever. Typically, it's domestic violence.
Typically domestic, but often combined with sexual abuse also. And let's throw in spiritual and emotional abuse while we're at it.
Right. So we want to talk about the do's and the don'ts because we get a lot of requests and people reach out, routinely. Hey, can you help me find safe shelter? I'm just here to say that's not what I do. That's not what Mom does. We are not equipped to provide shelter for
That
people.
being said, it bothers me when I can't make valid references for people.
Right.
It disturbs me, and I think that's what we're going to try to work through today a little bit to help those of you who are seeking shelter or, like us, have been asked, where can I get safe shelter?
And it is challenging. Typically, you're seeing a lot of these. We mentioned before, you've seen a lot of these in the news where people were legitimately in danger. The spouses, the wives were trying to get away from their violent husbands. And then it winds up with a homicide / suicide.
Right.
Not a good situation at all. So it is, it's incredibly challenging. Oftentimes you can't easily get away. You can't legally get away. If there's custody, both of you have custody with the kids, it gets even more complicated. So it's just a very complicated thing. And I'm not here to, talk about all the loopholes and how you get around all that stuff and what you do with that. These are just some basic rules because we see a lot of people who are vulnerable to begin with and they wind up in much worse shape after getting away than if they would have stayed with the abuser.
And that's
we want to
shame.
avoid that.
That is a shame. Jimmy and I were talking prior to this podcast, and people are vulnerable. We all are when we're being hurt, when we're in an abusive situation. And we're also longing to trust people, others, to help us. And it's so hard because all people are not honest. Let's face it.
That's exactly right.
About the softest way of saying it, but everyone is not to be trusted.
That's right, and that leads us to our number one. Blatantly, this is at the top of the list. Number one, don't ever use individuals for help unless you have known them your entire life, and that includes using advocates for help. Again, I have people reach out to me and say, hey, I'm looking for safe shelter, or I have somebody looking for safe shelter. What do I do with that? Do you know anybody? Do you know anybody where? And my answer is a resounding no.
Yeah.
You shouldn't trust any of us. I'm including myself in that. Don't trust us as individuals because there's no accountability. There's not accountability like there would be with an established organization. I don't have a board of directors. I don't have a way to screen people to know that if I'm sending somebody to somebody's house, that they're a trustworthy person. I just don't have that ability.
Well, we don't
I don't
know
have
the
capability.
legality of things.
That's
we
right.
really do not know any of that, and that puts us all in a very bad situation.
It's exactly right. So, I'm saying this for myself. Don't trust me. Don't trust her. Don't
Right.
trust other
Right.
advocates. It's not up to individuals. There is not enough hours in the day, in the month, in the year.
Right.
There's not enough hours to really screen people and to know that we're sending you into a trustworthy place. So I would never go through an individual to find safe shelter unless you absolutely have known this person and you literally would entrust your life and your children's life into the hands of that person. Otherwise, I just wouldn't do it. Another don't let people make decisions for you or rush you into making rash decisions. When you hear things like, you got to get out right now,
Right.
they're not asking you. They're not asking your opinion. They're telling you, and they're making you make this rash decision. Don't do it. Don't let people make decisions on your behalf. And don't let people rush you into making rash
That's
decisions.
one of the dangers of telling people our whole story. And that sounds like counterproductive because in order, to build trust, we need to be open, we need to be truthful. But I, for one, am extremely cautious in what
Yeah.
I share with others because I've been burned so many times by
Same here.
that. And others are, unfortunately, very quick to jump with their opinions. They know just what you should do. They're not in your volatile situation. You are
And they
the
don't
one
know all the
living,
facts, like you
right?
said, right.
You are the one living with that spouse who, is abusive. You are the one who sees what's being done to your children in that abusive situation, not them. And it's easy for another person to say, you have to do this now. The timing is critical with what we're talking about, getting away to a safe place. When the timing is off, the plan fails. I know that for a fact.
Yep.
It really does. If you make a wrong move, it's like, please be careful, people. I think
Well-
that's the big message we're saying about this part.
And I mean, you're exactly right. And we helped a family member get out of a very
did.
violent house.
Yes.
And that you as a parent were never like, you need to get out right now.
No.
And you knew, like, it was
I
a
knew.
very volatile, very dangerous
Very,
situation.
Very.
And your thing was, my phone is always on.
Right.
You tell me when,
Right.
and within minutes, we'll be there to move you out.
Exactly.
And that's how it went down.
Exactly what happened.
That
And it
wasn't
was-
you making the
no,
decision
no.
for this family member.
Right.
That was you saying,
Right.
you be the one. You will know when the time is right.
I couldn't have been more thankful for the way that happened. It was safe. It happened quickly. We were within the legal limits of the law. In fact, I had contacted law enforcement.
Exactly right.
I let them know what was going on. They were, very aware of what was happening. So, timing is just critical.
Yeah.
You can't force a person to leave, pack up the kids and leave when you don't know what's going on, really.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. Another one, don't let people take away your freedom or isolate you from friends and family. Anybody who does this is not a friend. Anybody who does this, any advocate who does this, is not a true victim advocate. If people are isolating you, taking away your freedoms, or isolating you from friends and family, that's dangerous. They might claim that it's for your better good. You have to cut off all friends and you have to cut off family because you don't know who to trust. This is a huge red flag. If somebody's telling you that, that's a huge red flag. Again, it goes
Yeah.
back to, you need to be the one to make those
Yes,
decisions, not somebody for you.
absolutely. If there's a pruning of friends, a cutting off, and a cutting off of family members, you will know the ones
That's
that
right.
needs to happen to. But when you see total isolation, that's a red flag that there is danger. None of us should be in that predicament where we cut ourselves off from everyone.
Yeah.
No way, because then our lives are held in the hand of the person who is engineering our thoughts, our actions, our timing,
And messing with your
everything.
emotions.
Yeah, and
Making
our
you make emotional decisions.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't let them convince you to get rid of your phone. I believe this is a really cruel tactic to convince you that your phone is somehow hacked, that you need a burner phone. The intention, make no mistake, the intention is not to protect you. It's to further isolate you and for them to maintain control. I never, ever, ever have recommended somebody get rid of their phone. I've recommended people or have suggested people block numbers. If somebody's
Right.
calling and harassing,
yeah.
block their number.
Right.
And then it's done.
Right.
But I've seen this. I've heard survivors tell me time and time again. We were told that our phone is probably bugged. It's a flat out conspiracy. It's a
right.
conspiracy theory, and it's
And-
just not true.
You know, when we're afraid, Jimmy, when we've lost sleep, when we are in a frightening situation, we begin to believe these things and they become very real to us. And it's very hard to unconvince us that this is not happening
Yeah.
to us. It's scary to think of what others, how they can maneuver and manipulate our thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I remember when my dad was doing that to you. He would be like,
Oh,
"Do you
it's
hear that clicking
terrible.
noise on
Yeah.
the phone?" And this was a
Yep.
landline. And really, I mean, if you ever spend time on a phone, phones can make clicky noises all the time.
Clicky, staticky, whatever.
He had you
Yeah.
so paranoid and so convinced that
Mm-hmm.
the phone was hacked, that people were coming up at the house, that the FBI was sitting in the driveway,
Sitting in
that-
trees,
yeah.
watching, and
And it wasn't true. It
no,
just none of it was true.
It was true. He was just trying to scare me so bad,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I speak from experience. I really do. I will never, never fall. Well, I shouldn't say never, because about when you say never is
Mm-hmm.
when you slip up. But I consciously won't ever allow someone to control my thoughts to that degree again.
Yeah.
It really sent me into a deep, dark place. Really
I mean,
did.
here's the thing. If somebody's trying to convince you that your phone is probably hacked and that people are listening, take it into a phone shop and say,
Just
hey,
what I was gonna
can you
say.
check it for
Yeah.
spyware?
Right.
It'll take them a matter of a couple minutes.
Right.
And they'll check it. Nope, no spyware is on your
Right.
phone. Okay, good.
Peace of mind.
Exactly. So,
Right.
yeah, if somebody's working hard to convince you that your phone is probably hacked and you need to get rid of it and get a burner phone, I'm telling you, don't fall for it. Do
Our
not fall
phones
for
are
it.
a lifeline, and we need to remember that, how fortunate we are to have our phones right now that we can call for help.
With your friend list,
Right.
you have your contacts for a
Yes.
reason, and
And-
that's part of the
right.
ploy to get rid of the
Exactly.
phone is it gets rid of your. We don't have numbers
Friend
memorized,
numbers, right? No.
so you get rid of all your contacts
Emergency
immediately.
contacts, all of that
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, don't fall for it. Don't let somebody position themselves as an expert who can counsel you. This is what therapists are for, not somebody who's helping you to find safe housing. Unless somebody has a degree in counseling, they should never be offering you counseling in any capacity. I just last night was on the phone with somebody, and he said, I understand that you're counseling my ex-spouse. I said, I want to clarify something.
Yeah.
I said, number one, I'm not a counselor. I don't counsel anybody. Number two, I've met with her once in a formal capacity, and it was to listen. And so I wanted to wipe that out because I'm not a counselor. I don't pretend to be a counselor. I don't pretend to work through
Right.
people's emotions and help
Right.
them get from point A to point B. I'll sit and I'll listen to people, but I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. And anybody who's telling you otherwise,
That
Run from
pretense
them.
is really dangerous.
it is.
Get that a lot too in the world of grief. You know, are you a grief counselor? No, I am not. I am not a certified therapist of any kind. Not at all. I am certified in grief facilitation, which is so totally different.
Mm-hmm.
I can facilitate grief groups. I can lead a group for materials, but I am not going to get into your psyche, your emotions, or
Right.
I'm not certified. I'm not trained. I will cannot do that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are many who will take on that role and also accept money for it. And you have
Exactly
to be
right.
very careful
Do
with that.
not give people money
No,
for
very
counseling
careful
you.
with
Now,
that.
if somebody's coaching is a little bit of a different animal.
Coaching is different, but it must be called a coach.
Right.
And be careful of that. We have the ability to look up certifications of people.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness that we have the internet like we do. Use it. I mean, anybody who's certified is going to be listed in a directory for that state that they are board certified.
And I'll say this too, even with coaching, that's not people telling you what to do
No,
ever. Nobody should
no,
ever be telling you what to
never,
do. And
never.
even when I do consulting, which is more formal than coaching, I'll tell churches or individuals, I'm not telling you what to
Right.
do. I will never do that. I might give you a list of suggestions, or not suggestions, recommendations,
Right.
and tell you what I would do if I were in
Right.
that given situation. But ultimately, it's up to you what you do, and I will not ever tell people
Nope.
what they have to do.
No,
I just
I will
won't do
not
it.
either. Never.
I think it's so manipulative when people are telling people, "Well, you need to do this." It's for the good
That
of
just
you
makes me
and your kids.
bristle
I know
because
it's
I
terrible.
have been in that seat so much of my life where I was told what I needed to do. And it was really bad counsel. I
Yeah.
can tell you now. We each have the capability of thinking through things. When we are being abused or in an abusive situation, we are at a weak point in our lives, agreed. But we still have that capability to step back and analyze on our own that situation and make our own decisions. And
Absolutely.
that's how it needs
And you
to
should
be.
make your own
Yes,
decisions.
yes.
Now, it's okay to ask people for help thinking through those decisions, but
Right.
if somebody's telling you what you need to do, I would run from them, to be honest. Don't let people suggest what might have happened to you. This is a very manipulative way of getting you to become more paranoid and isolated. The facts of your situation matter. So when somebody's listening to you, if somebody genuinely cares, they'll say, "Tell me more. Can you clarify? You said that this happened. Can you clarify?" Never should somebody say, "Might I suggest to you that this is what probably happened? That your husband not only was a domestic abuser, but he probably was a human trafficker too." In what sane world can we just
You
make
have no right,
assumptions and
right.
say, "Let me suggest that to you. You probably were trafficked in addition to being a domestic abuse survivor." That's total nonsense. Facts matter. If somebody, if you're telling your story and somebody's suggesting what happened to you in addition to what you've already told, again,
Beware.
I would run from them.
Beware. Yes, beware.
Don't ever, ever go to somebody's house who you do not know, unless this has been established through a legitimate organization. Don't ever go to somebody's house. And I feel like it's so strange. It's like we're doing stranger danger. But
For-
I've seen it time and time
Yeah.
again where survivors are they're kind of shuffled into people's houses and like, "Hey, this is a safe house." They never met this person before. And it's just like I've heard the stories. It's tragedy.
It's kind of like the foster child that is gotten saved from one very dangerous situation and then placed into a foster home where
Where they're
abuse.
abused.
And we know
Absolutely.
multiple children who have gone through that, and that's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
But we know it happens. We need to just use caution in any abusive situation.
Yeah.
Use caution when trying to escape or get away from that situation, because honestly, nobody else can make those decisions for us, nor should they.
Right.
safe homes, safe established places. We don't have enough. We know that. We'll get into that. But there are safe places out there. There are trustworthy agencies, which we'll get to.
Right. So, yeah, going to somebody's house you don't know is especially dangerous when you're in a vulnerable situation. It's, like you said, very similar to the foster kid who's being passed from house to house to house. That kid is so vulnerable. And foster parents know that. And unfortunately, a lot of people go into foster care for the money. And a lot of abusers become foster parents because it's such easy, fast access to victims, and you're being paid while you're abusing your victims.
Absolutely. And you're being applauded by others for being such a good person.
How noble, how
Yeah.
wonderful,
Right.
that you would sacrifice and do this out of the goodness of your heart.
We know,
Absolutely.
we know many who have done this.
And there are good foster parents.
The majority are, but
Yeah.
there's always that minority that
For
are
sure.
not.
And then finally, don't ever let somebody convince you to do something that is illegal. Like you said,
Right.
even with a family member, we wanted to make sure, hey, can we
Right.
legally, because there was at least
There was
one
a
minor
gun
in the house.
involved. There was a minor involved. There were different, all kinds of different things that were legal issues involved. And if you want to press criminal charges later on, you need to know what you can and cannot
Exactly.
do. Because when you break those barriers, then if you do have a case, it's all blown up. You can't do anything then. So.
Now, here's the true test. And I remember this. I mean, this was years ago, but I remember, well, you would remember better because you were the one directly involved. But didn't the sheriff say, if you want me there,
Yes.
I'll park in
yes.
the driveway
Yes,
while you guys
absolutely.
move the stuff out?
Absolutely. Yes.
That's the test.
right.
If you want to know, if you want to know that you're on the side of the law,
Right.
if somebody offers to be there with you when it happens, then that's a pretty good sign that you're not breaking laws.
It's a pretty good, real good sign. And it's just so important, I think, to have the law on your side for a number of reasons. We were covered on all
Yeah.
bases. We really were.
Yeah.
And that's how we want you to be.
Absolutely. So we'll go through the do's. Okay. Here's what you should do, not what you must do.
Right.
I want to clarify.
The guideline here. Yes.
These are some do's if you're seeking safe shelter or you know of somebody who's seeking it. Do go through a legitimate organization or a lifetime friend who you trust with your life.
Right.
Do your research. A legitimate organization will have reviews. They'll have a board of directors. They'll have the board of directors publicly listed. That won't be something you have to search for and send emails to find out who the board of directors is. That has to be public information if it's a legitimate organization. And there are a lot of organizations that, even though they're filed as a nonprofit or whatever with their state, they're faux organizations. So do your research. Make sure it's a legitimate organization. They should have their financials listed. A lot of times there's a pie graph that shows where, if it's a nonprofit, it'll show where the funds are going, how they're being distributed, and they will always a legitimate organization who's helping you find safe housing will always work with law enforcement.
Right. And I think that is I don't know if you want to toot the horn or whatever, say, hey, this is the one thing we need to remember. Locally, does your Salvation Army work with law enforcement?
100%.
Locally, right. Does your, Office on the Aging, they deal with abused elder people. Are they working with law enforcement?
100%.
Is your children's aid home working with law enforcement? They are all grouped together. They are all partnered. They know each other. They know each other well. They know how to work.
Yep.
Your drug enforcers, are they working with your district attorney and your in-house and outpatient drug facilities? Where this can become very, very tricky as to, what happens in finding housing in these situations.
Yeah.
But if they're working together, you're on the right track.
Yeah, for
They
sure.
will not lead you wrong. They
And they
really
won't
will
tell
not.
you that law enforcement's bad, and that's another one. We'll talk about that too. They won't tell you how bad law enforcement is and that they're all awful. Well,
No.
our next point: do be willing to talk to law enforcement,
Right.
and sometimes, unfortunately, I mean, this is not. It's like, oh well, I'm going to talk to law enforcement, and they'll take up the case and they'll treat me
Yeah.
well, and that's just it's not the way it works, unfortunately. You may have to talk to law enforcement many times. You might have to go back and back and back, and you might have to talk to different departments. You may find that the state police are unable or unwilling to help. Then you might have to bounce back to your county sheriff's office. They may be unwilling or unable to help. You may have to find local law enforcement.
I think along the way, though, they'll give you guidance where to go.
They may or may
And-
not. I've seen both
if they
sides
can't-
of this.
Yeah, and of course, I have had good experiences all along the way so far, so I can't say anything negative. I really can't, because in our community, really, they are all partnered pretty tightly, which is such a blessing. But when you do have to go from place to place, keep in mind I know we want immediate action, and sometimes we need it, and it's not always available. So we have to have, along with plan A, plan B, which
Yeah.
there again, we have to have that thought out in our minds. If plan A doesn't work right now, what is my plan
Well,
B?
and that's a
my
good
best
point.
plan for safety.
Ask law enforcement that. If you
Yes.
can't help me legally, because you're
Right.
going to run into that. I mean, you're going to
We
have law
will,
enforcement
right.
who will tell you
Yes.
legally I just had somebody say that the other day to me. I had a state trooper. I was with somebody, and he said, you know what? And he was super nice, but he was very blunt. And he said, given the facts that you've given me right now, he said, there's not a thing that I can do. He
Right.
said, my hands are tied. My response with the person sitting here, I said, what can we do?
Right.
What can
What's
I
the
personally
plan B?
do
What's right.
as an advocate for this
Right.
person? What's within my legal rights
Right.
to be able to help her out? And
Right.
you know what? He gave me a couple different ideas, and
They will give guidance.
yeah,
They
so it's
really
not like
will.
he was like,
No.
get out of my,
No.
get out of my department. I
No.
never want to talk to you again. You have to know how to ask the right questions. Be willing to talk to law enforcement. And I know this is not politically correct to say this right now, but I don't care. I'll say it anyway. Not all law enforcement is bad. It's an
Right.
absolute conspiracy to think that all are bad people, that they don't care, or that somehow they're out to get you personally. That's an absolute conspiracy. It's not true. Do police departments have bad apples? Yes. Probably every police department has at least one bad officer.
Right.
There's
But-
not a doubt about that.
But the majority are there to help us. If we could just remember that and talk with an attitude of, I know you want to help me, and ask questions that, like you said, are the questions that are going to help us find safety.
Do leave a place if you feel manipulated or unsafe. You're under absolutely this much zero obligation to stay with someone who makes you or your children feel unsafe in any capacity. Yeah, but they had to pull a bunch of strings to get me into this housing. So what? Is there a legal contract that says that you have to stay under the roof of this house? No.
What Jimmy's saying is follow your gut. And sometimes our gut will tell us there is something really wrong
Yeah.
here. There is something wrong, and I need to flee this situation. Sadly, people who are fleeing one abusive situation often will get trapped into a second abuse of a different type.
And they feel obligated.
Yeah,
Well, this
they're-
person's helping me out. Well, they went out of their way to find this housing, and so what? If you feel unsafe or if you feel manipulated, get you and your kids to a safe place.
You know what has helped me is to make a list, and it sounds a little naive or maybe weird or to some, but when I was going through a very bad situation where I felt extremely manipulated at home by your dad, and I didn't even know if I was sane or not sane, whatever, but I made a list of all, like we're going through, the yeses and the nos, the do's and the don'ts, the what I knew to be right and what I knew to be wrong. And when you look at that, when you step back and look and say, oh my gosh, this person is isolating me from every friend that I had. Oh my word, this person is telling me constantly what I need to do, not giving me opportunity to think it through. This person has made my situation feel like everybody is against me. Isn't that a big part of this, trying to escape? You already know that you're in a bad situation, but not everybody is out to get you.
And I would say along that line, not only do they make you feel like everybody's out to get you, but they make you feel like they're the only ones who
That
can
they are
who
the
care
only
or who can help
saving
you.
person.
I'm the
Yes,
only person
yeah.
who cares. That's not true.
No,
That's not true at all.
While you're having a together moment, make that list and stick it in your purse, your pocket, whatever. And when you get in a really tough situation, remember, and I mean this with all my heart, I carried my list with me for months and months and months because I needed to get out of a very bad situation, but wasn't sure I knew how, what, or when.
Yeah.
And this will help you.
Well,
It truly will.
and we'll skip to that point. Another do. Do look at the facts of your situation. A
Right.
list is a good
Yeah.
idea. Come up
Right.
with a list. And then discern fact from assumption. Facts are essential to learning how you got where you are and what you need to do to remain safe.
Right.
If you don't have facts
Right.
on your side, then it becomes this
No.
emotional tug. And
Right.
especially if you're being manipulated by
Right.
somebody who says that they care,
Ah,
they're forcing you to make these rash, quick
Decisions.
decisions. You need to hurry up. You need to get out. You need to escape. You need to go here. You need to go to this house.
they'll even tell you what will happen if you don't do this. If you don't do this right now, this is going to happen. They don't know what's
Exactly
going to
right.
So
Exactly right.
please, people, in the process of trying to find safety, don't make yourself go into a more dangerous position.
Yeah. Do talk often to friends and family who are supportive of you. Work hard to not become isolated. It's a very lonely place when you're in a vulnerable situation, just
Terrible.
automatically.
Yeah. Terrible.
Friends tend to scatter. It's not because they don't care. I know, like, we've had so many friends distance themselves when we're going through tragedies. It's not because they don't care. I think it's just that it's kind of an awkward, it's a heaviness that
really
comes with that.
is. Yeah.
So remember that. People they're not walking away because they don't care. So work hard to stay connected to the people who were in your life
Now, the
before
other
the tragedy
part
struck.
of that is often it's impossible to tell others of what truly is going on
Right. And you
within
don't-
the home.
sometimes you don't have to.
Say in the very abusive situation, such as our family member was in, she didn't have to tell me what was happening. I saw the bruises.
Yeah.
I saw the pain. I saw the brokenness. I saw the decline mentally and physically. I knew there was abuse, severe abuse going on. Often that person is scared out of their mind to say, hey, I'm in a trapped situation.
Or will flat out deny that abuse is going on.
Right, because they've been threatened so badly that if you tell, this is what I will do. And so we're aware of that. It becomes an all-encompassing, very difficult thing. But what we're trying to warn you is when you are seeking safety, don't depend on others to tell you what to do. There are legitimate
Yeah.
places of safety. Places I'd begin with law enforcement. That's right where I began.
Yeah.
Right there. I began right there
Yeah.
as my trustworthy people, really.
And then finally, do keep your phone and
Yes.
any means that family members have to maintain contact with you. Do not relinquish that to
Right.
anybody. I don't care how much you think they care for you. I don't care how famous an advocate they, or well known they are. It doesn't matter. If I were telling you to get rid of your phone and dump your all your contacts, I can tell you, from the outside looking in, I'm a dirtbag if I'm doing
Yeah,
that to you.
right.
Do not relinquish your phone and your contacts and any means that you have to stay connected to family and friends who actually care about you. Don't give that up to anyone. You have the right to stay into contact with who you want to stay in contact with. That's your decision. Don't let somebody make those decisions on your behalf or convince you against your will to dump your phone and all your contacts, because I'm telling you, that's a means to isolate you further. Nothing good can come from that.
Right.
So,
This is hard stuff, and we realize it's hard stuff. This is hard to hear. It's harder to live in a situation where you are fending for your freedom and for your safety. We
Yeah.
understand that, and we know we haven't even uncovered the half or the 100th of what you may be going through. These are guidelines to help direct you, point you in the right direction to getting the help and safety that you need and deserve.
yeah, for sure. So, I hope that's helpful. And this is just kind of from a lot of experience and running into survivors who I'm telling you, I've talked to so many people who are worse off than if they would have stayed in the abusive home. And that is not a good thing. We want people to be safe. We want people to feel safe. We want people to be able to get the help that they need.
Right.
There are appropriate channels to make that happen. And it may not happen in the time frame that you want it to happen, but we've got to go through the appropriate channels if we're going to help people stay safe. So, thank you for tuning in to this episode, and we will catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.